The distant howl of a coyote pierced the still Montana air as Levi Irwin reined in his dun gelding, squinting against the setting sun at what appeared to be a heap of fabric along the rutted dirt road. In the golden light of dusk in 1876, what he had first mistaken for discarded clothing revealed itself to be something far more alarming. A woman, collapsed at the roadside, her dress caked with the dust of miles. Levi dismounted quickly, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the hard, packed earth. At 32, he'd seen his share of death and hardship across the frontier, but the sight of this young woman alive but unconscious, her face streaked with dirt and tears, struck him in a way he hadn't expected. Her chestnut hair had mostly escaped its pins, and her breathing came shallow but steady. "Miss," he knelt beside her, noting the quality of her torn dress despite its bedraggled state. "Miss, can you hear me?" When she didn't stir, he touched her forehead gently, checking for fever. Finding her skin cool to the touch, he made a swift decision. With gentle hands, he gathered her slender form into his arms, surprised by how little she weighed. Her eyelids fluttered momentarily, revealing a glimpse of deep green before closing again. "You'll wake in a bed, not the dirt," Levi murmured as he carried her to his horse. "I promise you that much." Mounting with her secure against his chest proved challenging, but years of working with cattle and horses had made Levi strong and steady. Once settled, he urged his horse forward, heading toward his ranch 5 miles north. The woman remained limp in his arms, occasionally making small sounds of distress that tightened something in his chest. The last rays of sunlight had disappeared behind the mountains by the time the silhouette of his modest ranch house came into view. Levi had built it himself 3 years prior, after saving every penny from his days as a trail guide and cattle driver. Now, with 200 acres and a growing herd, he'd managed to make something of himself in this untamed corner of the territory. Mrs. Abernathy, his housekeeper, rushed out at the sound of hoofbeats, her gray hair escaping her bun as she gasped at the sight of the unconscious woman. "Land sakes, Mr. Irwin, what have you got there?" "Found her collapsed by the road to town," Levi explained, carefully dismounting while holding his burden. "She needs help, Mrs. Abernathy. Can you prepare the spare room?" The older woman hurried ahead, lighting lamps and turning down bedding while Levi carried the mysterious woman inside. In the lamplight, he could better see her features, young, perhaps 20 or 22, with a delicate face that spoke of gentle breeding rather than frontier hardship. "Poor thing," Mrs. Abernathy tutted as Levi placed her on the bed. "She's been through something terrible by the looks of it, those scratches on her hands and her dress all torn." "I'll fetch Dr. Simmons at first light," Levi said, stepping back to let his housekeeper take over. "For now, I'll tend to her, Mr. Irwin. You go see to your horse and get yourself some supper. This is women's business now." Levi nodded, taking one last look at the sleeping woman before leaving the room. Something about her tugged at him, not just concern for a stranger in need, but something deeper that he couldn't quite name. The woman didn't wake until well past midnight. Her scream jolted Levi from where he'd been dozing in a chair in the main room, having refused to retire to his own bed while their unexpected guest remained unconscious. He rushed to the spare room, finding Mrs. Abernathy already there, attempting to calm the panicked young woman who had pressed herself against the headboard, eyes wide with terror. "Where am I?" she demanded, her voice hoarse. "Who are you people?" "You're safe, miss," Levi said from the doorway, keeping his distance to avoid frightening her further. "I found you unconscious by the road about 5 miles south. This is my ranch." The woman's gaze darted between them, her breathing rapid. I can't remember how her hand flew to her throat, panic flashing across her face. "My locket. Where is my locket? Mrs. Abernathy gestured to the small table beside the bed. Right there, dear. I removed it only to make you more comfortable. Everything you had is there. The young woman snatched up a silver locket on a delicate chain, clutching it to her chest with visible relief. After a moment, her breathing steadied somewhat. My name is Levi Irwin, he offered gently. This is Mrs. Abernathy, my housekeeper. Might we know your name, miss? She swallowed hard, her fingers tracing the locket. Clara, she whispered. Clara Lowell, Miss Lowell, Levi acknowledged with a slight bow of his head. Do you recall what happened to you, how you came to be on that road? Clara's forehead creased with concentration, then distress. I was traveling. The stagecoach. There were men, her voice broke and tears welled in her eyes. They stopped us. There was shooting. Mrs. Abernathy made a sympathetic sound, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. The Blackwater Creek stage was robbed 2 days ago. Is that the one you were on, dear? Clara nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. Everyone else, the driver, the guard, the other passengers, they shot them all. They were going to take me with them. She shuddered visibly. When they were arguing among themselves, I ran. I ran until I couldn't anymore. Levi's jaw tightened at her words. The Blackwater stage robbery had been brutal business, 4 dead, according to what he'd heard in town yesterday. No mention had been made of a missing woman passenger. You're safe now, he assured her. Those men won't find you here. Clara looked at him fully for the first time, her green eyes measuring him. How do I know I can trust you, Mr. Irwin? It was a fair question, one that showed good sense despite her ordeal. You don't, Levi admitted. But I give you my word as a gentleman that no harm will come to you in my house. Tomorrow, I'll take you to town to speak with Sheriff Donovan if you wish, or to the doctor, or the telegraph office, wherever you need to go. Some of the tension eased from her shoulders. Thank you, she whispered. Mrs. Abernathy patted her hand. Think you could manage some broth, Miss Lowell? You need to get your strength back. Clara nodded, and the older woman bustled off to the kitchen, leaving Levi standing awkwardly in the doorway. I'll leave you to rest, he said, turning to go. Mr. Irwin. He paused, looking back at her. You said, did you carry me here, on horseback? Levi nodded. That was very kind, she said softly. Thank you for not leaving me there. No decent man would have, he replied simply, then left her to her privacy in the kitchen. Mrs. Abernathy was warming broth and gave him a knowing look as he entered. Pretty little thing, isn't she? Even all scratched up and frightened half to death. Levi frowned. She's been through a terrible ordeal, Mrs. Abernathy. Don't go getting ideas. The housekeeper smiled innocently. I wasn't getting any ideas, Mr. Irwin, just making an observation about our guest. She poured steaming broth into a bowl. Though I will say, this house could use a woman's touch beyond my practical arrangements. Mrs. Abernathy, he warned. Oh, go get some sleep, she shooed him away. I'll see to Miss Lowell. Levi retreated to his bedroom, but sleep proved elusive. His mind kept returning to Clara Lowell, to her terror upon waking, to the grief and shock in her eyes, to the surprising courage it must have taken to escape armed bandits and survive days alone in the wilderness. Most ladies of her apparent refinement would have perished within hours. By dawn, Levi had made a decision. After checking that Clara was sleeping peacefully, he saddled his horse and rode to town, arriving just as Sheriff Donovan was unlocking the jailhouse. Irwin, the lawman nodded in greeting. What brings you in so early? Levi dismounted, tying his horse to the hitching post. The Blackwater stage robbery. I need to know what you've learned. Donovan's bushy eyebrows rose. Since when are you interested in such matters? Thought you kept to yourself out at that ranch of yours. I found a survivor, Levi said quietly. A young woman named Clara Lowell. Says she escaped when the bandits were arguing over her. The sheriff's expression changed instantly. "You don't say. Bring her in right away. I've got 4 bodies and no witnesses she could help me identify the gang. She's recovering at my ranch. Been through hell by the looks of it. Tell me what you know first." Inside the sheriff's office, Donovan poured them both coffee and detailed what little was known. The Blackwater stage had been ambushed 10 miles east of town. The driver, shotgun guard, and 2 male passengers had been shot dead. The strongbox containing a bank shipment had been taken, along with all personal valuables. No mention was made of a female passenger, Levi pointed out. Donovan nodded grimly. The manifest showed 4 passengers, all male. She must have boarded later at one of the smaller stops. Or someone didn't want it known she was traveling, Levi suggested. She's well-spoken, well-dressed despite her ordeal, not your typical frontier woman. Could be running from something or someone, Donovan said thoughtfully. I'll need to question her. Tomorrow, Levi said firmly. She needs rest today. The sheriff studied him over the rim of his coffee cup. Mighty protective of a woman you just met, Irwin. Levi ignored the implication. I need a few things from the general store for her, then I'll head back. An hour later, Levi returned to his ranch with supplies: a ready-made dress that he hoped would fit Clara, some basic toiletries, and a telegram he'd sent east inquiring about the Lowell family. It was a common enough name, but perhaps he'd get lucky. He found Clara sitting on the front porch, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm morning sun. Her hair had been neatly braided, presumably by Mrs. Abernathy, and her face freshly washed. The scratches and bruises stood out starkly against her pale skin. "You're looking better," he said as he dismounted, packages under his arm. "Your housekeeper is very kind," Clara replied, watching him approach. "She said you'd gone to town." Levi nodded. "Spoke with the sheriff. He'll want to talk to you tomorrow if you're feeling up to it." He hesitated, then held out the brown paper package. "Thought you might appreciate some fresh clothes. Had to guess at the size." Clara's fingers trembled slightly as she took the package. "Thank you. I have no way to repay you for this kindness." "Not asking for repayment," Levi said simply. She studied him with those remarkable green eyes. Most men would. The blunt statement revealed more about her past experiences than perhaps she intended. Levi kept his expression neutral. "I'm not most men, Miss Lowell. You're welcome to stay until you're recovered and have made arrangements to continue your journey." He tipped his hat and turned to lead his horse to the barn. "I was going to San Francisco," Clara called after him. Levi paused, looking back at her. "I have an aunt there," she continued. It was to be a new start. He nodded in acknowledgement of her confidence. "Well, that journey can still happen once you're recovered." In the barn, as Levi unsaddled his horse, he contemplated Clara Lowell's situation. A young woman traveling alone to San Francisco spoke of unusual circumstances. Running from something, as Donovan had suggested, or simply seeking independence in a world that offered women few choices. By supper time, Clara had transformed. The dress Levi had purchased fit her reasonably well, though it was simpler than what he suspected she was accustomed to wearing. Her color had improved after a day of Mrs. Abernathy's feeding, and she joined them at the table with an air of determined dignity. "Mr. Irwin tells me you're bound for San Francisco, Miss Lowell," Mrs. Abernathy said as she served the roast beef. Clara nodded. "My Aunt Emily lives there. She's invited me to stay with her while I consider my options." "A long journey for a young lady alone," the housekeeper remarked. "I wasn't meant to be alone," Clara replied softly. "My companion took ill in St. Louis and couldn't continue. I was advised to wait, but—" She trailed off, staring at her plate. "But waiting wasn't possible," Levi finished for her. Clara's eyes met his, surprised and grateful for his understanding. "No, it wasn't." The meal continued with lighter conversation. Mrs. Abernathy recounting local gossip from her last trip to town, Levi discussing the new calves born that spring. Clara listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that revealed her unfamiliarity with ranch life. After dinner, when Mrs. Abernathy had retired to her quarters in the small attached building behind the main house, Clara lingered in the main room where Levi was reviewing his accounts at a sturdy oak desk. "Is there a book I might borrow?" she asked hesitantly. "To pass the time." Levi looked up, noting how the lamplight cast a warm glow on her features. "Of course." He gestured to a small bookshelf in the corner. "Not much of a library, I'm afraid, but you're welcome to anything there." Clara browsed the shelf, eventually selecting a volume of Emerson's essays. "You appreciate philosophy, Mr. Irwin." "When I have time for it," he admitted, "which isn't often enough." She settled into a chair by the fire, opening the book. For several minutes, the only sounds were the crackling of the flames and the occasional rustle of paper as one of them turned a page. "May I ask you something, Mr. Irwin?" Clara finally broke the comfortable silence. Levi set down his pen. "You may." "Why did you bring me here?" "You could have taken me directly to town, to a hotel or the doctor's office." He considered her question carefully. "You were unconscious, injured. I didn't know how serious your condition might be. My ranch was closer than town, and I knew Mrs. Abernathy could provide better care than you'd get at the hotel." "That's very practical," Clara said, a slight smile curving her lips. "But I suspect there's more to it." Levi found himself warming to her directness. "Perhaps I've seen enough of how this world treats vulnerable women to know you'd be safer here, at least until you regained your strength." She nodded slowly. "You're an unusual man, Mr. Irwin." "Just doing what's right," he replied. Clara returned to her book, and Levi to his accounts, but something had shifted in the atmosphere between them, a tentative trust beginning to form. The following morning brought Sheriff Donovan to the ranch. Clara received him in the main room, sitting straight-backed in a chair while she recounted her ordeal. Levi remained nearby at her request, impressed by her composure as she described the terrifying details of the robbery and her escape. "There were 4 of them," she explained. "The leader was a tall man with a scar across his chin. They called him Rollins. The others were younger. One was just a boy, really, perhaps 17. Donovan nodded, taking notes. "That matches what we know of the Rollins gang. They've hit 3 stages in the past month." "They argued about me," Clara continued, her voice steady despite the painful subject. "Rollins wanted to keep me. Another man said they should just kill me like the others. While they were fighting, I managed to slip away into the trees." "You showed remarkable courage, Miss Lowell," the sheriff said. "And luck." "I ran for what felt like days," she said. "I had nothing but the clothes I wore and my locket." Her hand went instinctively to her throat where the silver locket now hung. "I drank from streams when I found them. Ate berries. I think I was walking in circles part of the time." "You remember nothing after that until Mr. Irwin found you?" Clara shook her head. "I was so tired. I must have collapsed by the road." After the sheriff left, promising to telegraph if he had news of the Rollins gang's capture, Clara seemed exhausted. Levi guided her to the porch swing where she could rest in the fresh air. "You did well," he told her. "Donovan's a good lawman. If anyone can bring those men to justice, it's him." Clara nodded, her earlier composure beginning to crack. "I keep seeing their faces, hearing the shots. The driver, Mr. Billings, he'd been so kind to me during the journey. They shot him without a word." Levi hesitated, then sat beside her on the swing. "The memories will fade in time." "Will they?" Her voice was small. "I've seen so much death in my life, Mr. Irwin. It never seems to fade completely." He didn't press her to explain, sensing the pain behind her words. Instead, he gently pushed the swing into motion, letting the rhythmic creaking fill the silence between them. "My father died in the war," Clara volunteered after several minutes. "At Gettysburg, I was 15. My mother never recovered from the grief. She passed last winter." Her fingers traced the pattern on her locket. This was hers. It contains their miniature portraits. "I'm sorry for your losses," Levi said quietly. "The war took much from many." "Were you a soldier, Mr. Irwin?" Levi nodded. "Union cavalry, saw things no man should see. It's partly why I came west afterward, needed open skies and distance from all that death." Clara turned to look at him, really look at him, perhaps seeing beyond the competent rancher to the man beneath. "And did you find peace here?" "Most days," he answered honestly. "The work helps, building something instead of destroying." "Yes," she whispered. "That's what I hope to find in San Francisco, a chance to build something new." They sat in companionable silence until Mrs. Abernathy called them for the midday meal. Afterward, to Levy's surprise, Clara asked if she might see the ranch. "I've spent my whole life in cities and towns," she explained. "I'd like to understand this place that's sheltering me." Levi hitched up his gentlest mare to a small buggy and took Clara on a tour of his modest holdings, the creek that provided water year-round, the grazing pastures where his growing herd of cattle fattened on sweet grass, the stand of pines he'd left untouched because he enjoyed their scent and shade. Clara asked intelligent questions about ranching operations, showing genuine interest in a world so different from her own. When they stopped by the creek to let the horse drink, she removed her borrowed bonnet and turned her face to the sun. "It's beautiful here," she said. "So vast and open." "I can see why you chose it. It's hard work," Levi cautioned. "The winters are brutal. Wolves take calves. Markets fluctuate." Clara smiled. "All life has its hardships, Mr. Irwin. At least here they seem honest ones." Something about her words, or perhaps the way the sunlight caught in her chestnut hair, stirred an unfamiliar warmth in Levy's chest. He found himself noticing the graceful turn of her wrist as she gestured toward a hawk circling overhead, the slight dimple that appeared when she smiled fully. On the drive back to the house, Clara grew quiet. "Finally," she said, "I should make plans to continue my journey soon. I've imposed on your hospitality long enough." "There's no rush," Levi assured her. "The next stage west doesn't leave for 5 days. You're welcome to stay until then." "That's very kind, but please," he interrupted, surprising himself with the earnestness in his voice. "You're still recovering. And frankly, Mrs. Abernathy would have my hide if I let you leave before she's satisfied you're fully mended." Clara's laugh was unexpected and delightful. "Well, I certainly wouldn't want to cause trouble between you and your housekeeper." "Smart decision," Levi said with mock seriousness. "She's a formidable woman." The days that followed fell into a pleasant rhythm. Clara regained her strength rapidly, helping Mrs. Abernathy with household tasks despite the older woman's protests. She proved to be skilled with a needle, mending several of Levy's shirts with tiny, precise stitches far neater than Mrs. Abernathy's practical darning. In the evenings, they often sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Sometimes they talked, Clara telling stories of her childhood in Philadelphia, Levi recounting tales of his early days on the frontier. Other times they simply existed in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts yet somehow connected. On the 4th day, Levi received a telegram from a contact in Philadelphia. He debated whether to share its contents with Clara, uncertain how she would receive the information. By supper, he had made his decision. "I received word from back east today," he said as they sat at the table, "about your family." Clara's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "You've been making inquiries about me." "Only to confirm your story," Levi admitted. "For your safety as much as anything else." She set her fork down. "And what did you learn about the Lowells of Philadelphia?" "That they were a respected family in shipping. That Edward Lowell died at Gettysburg as a Union colonel, leaving behind a widow and daughter. That the widow, Margaret, passed away this past January after a long illness." He hesitated. "And that their daughter, Clara, fled Philadelphia 3 months ago to avoid marriage to Richard Blackburn, her late father's business partner, a man 30 years her senior who gained control of the family business when Margaret died." Clara's face had gone very still. "Your sources are well informed. Are they accurate?" She nodded once sharply. "Mr. Blackburn made it clear that our marriage was the only way to settle my father's outstanding debts. I strongly suspect Blackburn himself fabricated. When I refused, he became insistent. Said no respectable family would take me in without a dowry which he controlled." Levi's jaw tightened at the implication. "So you ran." "I had little choice. My Aunt Emily is my mother's sister. She never approved of Blackburn and offered me sanctuary." Clara's eyes flashed with a defiant spirit that Levi found himself admiring. "I left with only what I could carry, and the small amount of cash I had managed to hide away over the years. And Blackburn will be looking for me, I have no doubt. He's not a man who accepts defeat easily." She met Levi's gaze directly. "Now you know the truth of my situation. I'm a woman with no fortune, no family protection, and a powerful enemy, still willing to let me stay until the stage comes. You're welcome here as long as you need," Levi said without hesitation. Clara studied him, perhaps searching for ulterior motives. "Why are you so kind to me, Mr. Irwin? What do you want in return?" The bluntness of her question didn't offend him. She'd clearly learned to be wary of men's motives. "Nothing," he answered honestly, "except perhaps your friendship." Surprise flickered across her face, followed by something softer. "You have that already," she said quietly. The next morning, Clara joined Levi as he repaired a section of fence near the house. She held nails for him and asked questions about the ranch's operations. The day was warm, and as noon approached, they sought shade under a large oak tree. "What made you choose ranching?" Clara asked as they shared the lunch Mrs. Abernathy had packed for them. Levi considered the question. "After the war, I drifted west like many men. Tried my hand at prospecting, freight hauling, even served as a scout for the Army for a time. Nothing felt right until I worked a cattle drive from Texas. I liked the animals, the open air, the honest work. And you built all this yourself." She gestured toward the ranch house visible in the distance. "Every bit of it." Pride colored his voice. "Took 3 years of saving every penny I earned working other men's ranches before I could buy the land. Another year to build the house. Started with just 20 head of cattle. Now I'm up to nearly 200, Clara smiled. "You should be proud. It's a beautiful place." "Still plenty that needs doing," Levi said, looking across his land. "Barn needs expanding. House could use more rooms, and I've barely touched the north section of the property." "You have plans," she observed. "Always have plans," he agreed. "A man needs something to work toward." Clara was quiet for a moment. "I envy that certainty. My entire life was planned for me, which schools, which social events, which potential husbands were appropriate. The only future I could imagine was as someone's wife, running a household, raising children." "Is that not what you want?" "I want it to be my choice," she said firmly. "With a man I respect, perhaps even love, not an arrangement made for financial convenience." Levi found himself wondering what kind of man Clara might choose if given true freedom to do so. The thought stirred something unexpected in his chest. "And what will you do in San Francisco?" he asked. "With your aunt. She runs a small bookshop. I'll help her there while I consider my options." Clara plucked a blade of grass, twirling it between her fingers. "I've had some education more than most women, thanks to my father's progressive views. I can keep accounts, speak French and a little Spanish, play the piano adequately." "Valuable skills," Levi noted. "Perhaps." She didn't sound convinced. "I'm learning there's much I don't know about practical matters. These past days watching you and Mrs. Abernathy, the knowledge you both have about simply surviving and thriving here, it's humbling." "Different worlds require different skills," Levi said. "You'd likely find me just as lost in a Philadelphia drawing room." That drew a genuine laugh from Clara. "I can just imagine you at one of Mrs. Estor's tea parties, discussing cattle breeding with horrified socialites." The sound of her laughter did something to Levi, warmed him in a way that had nothing to do with the summer sun. He found himself wanting to hear it again, to be the cause of it. They finished the repairs by mid-afternoon and walked back to the house together. As they approached, they spotted a rider coming up the long drive. Sheriff Donovan. Clara tensed beside him. "Do you think he has news of the Rawlins gang?" "We'll find out soon enough," Levi said, instinctively moving slightly closer to her side. Donovan dismounted, removing his hat as they approached. "Miss Lowell, Mr. Irwin. Any news, Sheriff?" Levi asked. "Indeed there is. Army patrol caught up with the Rawlins gang near the territorial border. There was a shootout." Donovan's weathered face showed satisfaction. "Rawlins and 2 others are dead. The youngest one surrendered. He's in custody, singing like a canary about their previous robberies." Clara's hand went to her throat. "They're gone." "Yes, madam. Thought you'd want to know right away." "You won't need to worry about them anymore or testify at any trial." "Thank you for telling us," Levi said, noting how Clara had gone pale despite the good news. After Donovan departed, Clara stood motionless in the yard, her expression distant. "Clara," Levi touched her arm gently. "Are you all right?" "They're dead," she whispered, just like that. "More violence, more death," understanding dawned. "You're not celebrating their deaths," she shook her head. "They were terrible men who did terrible things, but I can't feel joy at anyone's death, not after everything." Levi guided her to the porch steps, sitting beside her. "That speaks well of your character." "Does it?" She looked at him with troubled eyes. "Sometimes I think I've seen too much death to feel anything properly anymore." "You feel plenty," Levi contradicted gently. "I've seen it in how you talk about your parents, how you helped Mrs. Abernathy with that injured bird yesterday, how you thank every person who shows you the smallest kindness." Clara's expression softened. "You've been watching me closely, Mr. Irwin." Levi felt heat rise in his face. "I notice things. Habit from my scouting days." A small smile tugged at her lips. "Is that all it is?" The question hung between them, charged with meaning neither of them was quite ready to acknowledge. "The stage leaves tomorrow," Levi said instead, "if you still plan to take it." Something flickered in Clara's eyes, disappointment, resignation. She looked away toward the mountains. "Yes, I should continue my journey. My aunt will be worried." Levi nodded, ignoring the hollow feeling in his chest. "I'll drive you to town in the morning." That evening, dinner was a subdued affair. Mrs. Abernathy filled the silence with chatter, seeming to sense the melancholy that had settled over both Levi and Clara. After the meal, Levi excused himself to check on a pregnant mare in the barn, needing space to sort through his tangled thoughts. He was surprised when, an hour later, Clara appeared in the barn doorway. "Mrs. Abernathy said I might find you here," she explained, stepping carefully into the lantern-lit space. "Is the mare all right?" Levi nodded, rising from where he'd been sitting on a hay bale. "Just checking on her." "She's due any day now." Clara approached the stall, reaching out hesitantly to stroke the mare's nose. "She's beautiful." "First foal I bred here," Levi said with quiet pride. "Her dam was my first purchase when I started the ranch." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the mare nickering softly under Clara's gentle touch. "I wanted to thank you properly," Clara finally said, "for everything you've done for me, finding me, taking me in, protecting me." "No need for thanks," Levi replied. "Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't have," Clara said with certainty. "Most men would have taken advantage of a woman in my position, or at the very least expected something in return." Levi shifted uncomfortably under her direct gaze. "I'm not most men." "No," she agreed softly. "You're not." The lantern light cast a golden glow on her face, highlighting the delicate curve of her cheek, the fullness of her lips. Levi became acutely aware of how close they were standing, how the barn's intimate shadows seemed to wrap around them. "Clara," he began, uncertain what he meant to say. "I don't want to leave," she whispered, the words rushing out as if she'd been holding them back. "These past days I've never felt so, at peace, so myself." Levi's heart hammered in his chest. "You have your aunt waiting, your plans." "Plans can change." She stepped closer, her green eyes searching his face. "Unless I'm mistaken about what's growing between us." "You're not mistaken," Levi admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "But I wouldn't have you stay out of gratitude or because you feel you have no other choice." Clara's chin lifted, that same determination he'd come to admire flashing in her eyes. "I have choices, Levi. For perhaps the first time in my life, I'm making one freely. I choose to stay if you'll have me." The use of his given name, the quiet certainty in her voice, broke something loose in Levi's chest. He reached for her hand, enfolding it in his own. "I have little to offer beyond this ranch, Clara. It's a hard life, especially for someone raised in comfort." "I don't want comfort," she replied. "I want purpose, meaning, a chance to build something of my own." Her free hand came up to touch his face lightly. "With someone who sees me as I truly am." Levi couldn't resist any longer. He leaned down, closing the distance between them, and pressed his lips to hers gently at first, then with growing passion as she responded eagerly, her arms sliding around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Levi rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Not forever, not yet. Stay a month. If after that time you still want this life, want me, then we can talk about forever." Clara smiled, the joy in her eyes warming him to his core. "A sensible proposal, Mr. Irwin, I accept." The following morning, instead of taking Clara to the stagecoach, Levi rode into town alone to send a telegram to her aunt in San Francisco, explaining the situation and Clara's decision to remain in Montana temporarily. He returned with writing paper and ink, so Clara could compose a proper letter with all the details. The next weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Clara threw herself into learning ranch life with characteristic determination. She convinced Mrs. Abernathy to teach her to cook proper meals, not the delicate desserts and tea sandwiches of her Philadelphia upbringing. She followed Levi on his daily rounds, asking questions, offering observations, gradually taking on small responsibilities of her own. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch talking for hours. Levi shared stories of his childhood in Illinois, his experiences during the war, his dreams for the ranch. Clara told him of her sheltered upbringing, her love of books, her secret desire to see the great natural wonders of the country. "I used to read travel accounts and imagine seeing Niagara Falls or the Grand Canyon," she confessed one evening. "My mother thought it terribly unladylike to express interest in such adventures." "We could see the canyon someday," Levi said. "It's not so far from here, relatively speaking." Clara's eyes lit up. "Truly, you'd take me there." "I'd take you anywhere you wanted to go," he promised, meaning it with every fiber of his being. Their courtship progressed with both passion and restraint. Levi was determined to honor Clara's reputation, aware that his ranch was isolated enough that propriety might easily be forgotten. Mrs. Abernathy served as a cheerful chaperone, though she often found reasons to busy herself in other parts of the house, giving them privacy for conversations and the increasingly frequent kisses they shared. 3 weeks after Clara had decided to stay, a response finally arrived from her Aunt Emily. The telegram was brief but supportive. "Delighted by your news. Stop. Take time to be certain. Stop. Will visit when possible. Stop. All my love, Emily." "She approves," Clara said with relief after reading the message. "Not that I needed her approval, but it's nice to have it." Levi squeezed her hand. "Your aunt sounds like a wise woman." "She is," Clara agreed. "She married for love rather than advantage and never regretted it, even when it meant being ostracized from certain social circles." That evening they rode to a bluff overlooking the valley as the sun began to set. The golden light bathed the landscape in warm hues, catching in Clara's hair as she dismounted with the growing confidence of someone becoming comfortable on horseback. "It's so beautiful," she breathed, looking out over Levi's land, the meandering creek, the grazing cattle, the sturdy ranch house in the distance. "It is," Levi agreed, though he was looking at her rather than the view. Clara caught his gaze and smiled. "The month is nearly up," she said softly. 3 more days, Levi nodded. "Are you having second thoughts?" She shook her head, moving closer to him. "Not one." "Are you?" In answer, Levi dropped to one knee before her, taking her hands in his. "Clara Lowell, I never expected to find you or anyone like you. I know we've known each other a short time by conventional standards, but I feel like I've known your heart much longer." He took a deep breath. "I love you. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears sprang to Clara's eyes. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Levi, yes." He stood, gathering her into his arms, lifting her off her feet in his joy. When he set her down, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold ring. "It was my mother's," he explained as he slipped it onto her finger. "Nothing fancy like you might have had back east. It's perfect," Clara interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. "More perfect than any diamond could be." Their kiss sealed the promise, passionate and tender all at once. As they rode back to the ranch, hand in hand, Levi felt a contentment he'd never known before, as though a piece of himself he hadn't realized was missing had finally been found. The wedding took place 3 weeks later, a simple ceremony in the town church with Sheriff Donovan and his wife, Dr. Simmons, and a few of Levi's neighboring ranchers in attendance. Mrs. Abernathy wept openly throughout, declaring it the happiest day since her own wedding 40 years earlier. Clara wore a dress of pale blue silk, a surprise gift from her Aunt Emily, who had sent it along with her blessing and promises to visit the following spring. Levi, in a new black suit that felt stiff and unfamiliar, could scarcely believe his good fortune as he watched his bride walk toward him down the short aisle. "You are the most beautiful sight I've ever seen," he whispered as she reached him. Clara's answering smile was radiant. "And you, Mr. Irwin, are the answer to a prayer I didn't even know I was making." The ceremony was brief, the words ancient and binding. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Levi kissed his bride with a reverence that brought sighs from the ladies present and approving nods from the men. The small reception afterward featured Mrs. Abernathy's finest baking and rather more whiskey than the church ladies approved of, though they refrained from comment out of respect for the happy occasion. As the sun began to set, Levi and Clara took their leave, riding back to the ranch, their home now, truly and legally shared. Mrs. Abernathy had discreetly arranged to stay in town with a friend for 2 days, giving the newlyweds privacy. The house felt different somehow as they entered, warmer, more intimate. "Welcome home, Mrs. Irwin," Levi said softly, lifting Clara into his arms to carry her across the threshold. She laughed, her arms around his neck. "I do believe I like the sound of that." The days and weeks that followed were filled with adjustments and discoveries. Clara proved a quick study in ranch management, taking over the account books with a skill born of her education and natural intelligence. Levi found himself consulting her on business decisions, valuing her fresh perspective. Their physical relationship blossomed with the same passionate tenderness that marked their courtship. Levi was gentle, considerate, determined to make Clara's first experiences of physical love as beautiful as possible. Clara approached this new aspect of marriage with the same curious enthusiasm she brought to everything, surprising Levi with her ardor once her initial shyness faded. "I never imagined it could be like this," she confessed one night as they lay tangled in the bedsheets, her head resting on his chest. "The way women talk, or rather, don't talk about it. I thought it was merely a duty to be endured." Levi stroked her hair, smiling in the darkness. "Between two people who truly care for each other, it's much more than duty." "So I'm discovering," she replied, pressing a kiss to his shoulder. Autumn arrived, painting the mountains in brilliant hues of red and gold. The ranch work intensified as they prepared for winter hay to be stored, repairs to be completed before the snow flew, cattle to be moved to more sheltered pastures. Clara worked alongside Levi whenever possible, learning to ride with increasing skill, helping with the less demanding physical tasks, ensuring the household was prepared for the coming cold. In the evenings, they often read to each other by the fire, Clara's clear voice bringing Levi's neglected books to life in new ways. When the first snow fell in late October, Clara stood on the porch wrapped in a thick shawl, her face alight with wonder. "It's so beautiful," she breathed as the large flakes drifted down. "We had snow in Philadelphia, of course, but it turned gray and slushy almost immediately. This is magical." Levi slipped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Wait until there's 3 feet of it and the wind is howling. Might seem less magical then." She leaned back against him, completely at ease in his embrace. "Even then, I'll love it, because I'm here with you." The winter proved to be as harsh as Levi had warned, with blizzards that kept them housebound for days at a time. Yet even in those confined circumstances, they found joy in each other's company. Clara taught Levi to play chess, a game he'd never mastered. He showed her how to carve simple figures from wood, a skill he'd learned from his grandfather. They talked of the future, of improvements they wanted to make to the ranch, of places they hoped to visit someday. Carefully, tentatively, they spoke of children, the family they both hoped to create together. "I'd like a daughter with your eyes," Levi said one evening as they lay before the fire. Clara smiled, her hand finding his. "And I'd like a son with your steady nature and kind heart." "You think I'm kind?" Levi asked, genuinely curious. "The kindest man I've ever known," Clara affirmed. "You showed it from the moment you found me by that road. 'You'll wake in a bed, not the dirt,' you said. I remember that, though I was barely conscious." Levi brushed a strand of hair from her face. "It was the only decent thing to do." "No," Clara shook her head. "The decent thing would have been to take me to town and leave me at the doctor's office. You did more. You gave me safety, respect, and eventually, love." She kissed him softly. "You saved more than my life that day, Levi. You saved my faith in humanity." In December, Clara received word that her Aunt Emily would visit in the spring, once travel became easier. The prospect delighted her, though she admitted to some nervousness. "She's my only remaining family," she explained to Levi. "I want her to see how happy I am here, how right this choice was." "She will," Levi assured her. "Anyone who spends 5 minutes with you can see you flourished here." It was true. The frightened, exhausted woman he'd found by the roadside had transformed into a confident, capable ranch wife who rode horseback with ease, kept the household accounts with precision, and had won the respect of neighboring ranchers' wives with her genuine interest in learning from them. Christmas brought a heavy snowfall that isolated them from town, but they celebrated joyfully nonetheless. Levi had secretly ordered gifts from a catalog months earlier, a set of leather-bound books for Clara, and a silver hairbrush and mirror set she'd admired in the general store window. Clara, in turn, surprised him with a hand-knitted scarf she'd been working on in secret, and a new saddle blanket she'd commissioned from a local weaver, decorated with a pattern that matched his ranch brand. "How did you arrange that without me knowing?" Levi asked, genuinely impressed. Clara's eyes twinkled. "Mrs. Donovan helped me. The sheriff brought it out last time he visited, hidden under his coat." "You're becoming quite the conspirator, Mrs. Irwin," Levi laughed, pulling her into his arms. "I have hidden depths," she agreed solemnly, though her smile betrayed her. The new year brought continued happiness, but also a new development. By February, Clara was certain she was with child. The news filled Levi with both joy and trepidation. "I've sent for the doctor," he insisted after she told him. "You need proper care." Clara laughed, touching his worried face tenderly. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, my love. I'm healthy and strong, there's no need for concern yet." Nevertheless, when Dr. Simmons confirmed the pregnancy and pronounced Clara in excellent health, Levi felt relief wash over him. The doctor estimated the baby would arrive in late summer or early fall, giving them plenty of time to prepare. As spring thawed the land, bringing new calves and fresh green growth, Clara bloomed as well. The slight rounding of her belly filled Levi with a fierce protectiveness and pride. He found himself watching her constantly, ready to assist with the smallest task, until Clara finally confronted him with hands on her hips. "Levi Irwin, if you don't stop hovering over me like I'm made of spun glass, I swear I'll lock myself in the barn until you come to your senses." "I'm pregnant, not invalid." Properly chastened, he tried to give her the independence she valued, though it wasn't easy. His love for her had only deepened with time, and the prospect of her facing any discomfort or danger was nearly unbearable. In April, Aunt Emily arrived on the stage from San Francisco. A tall, slender woman with Clara's green eyes and an air of quiet dignity, she embraced her niece with tears of joy. "Look at you," she exclaimed, holding Clara at arm's length. "You're positively glowing." Clara laughed, one hand resting on her now visible pregnancy. "I'm happy, Aunt Emily, truly, deeply happy." Emily turned to Levi, studying him with a directness that reminded him strongly of her niece. "So you're the man who found my Clara by the roadside and made her his wife within a month?" "Yes, madam," Levi replied, feeling oddly like a schoolboy being evaluated by a stern teacher. A smile suddenly transformed Emily's face. "Then you're the man I've been waiting to thank properly." She surprised him by embracing him warmly. "You've given her the freedom and love she deserves." During her 2-week visit, Aunt Emily proved to be delightful company, well-read, witty, and full of stories about Clara's childhood that had Levi roaring with laughter and Clara blushing furiously. She was always the one asking questions no proper young lady should ask, Emily recounted over dinner. "Why can't women vote? Why must she wear restrictive corsets? Why couldn't she attend the university like her male cousins?" "I wasn't that bad," Clara protested. You were worse, Emily insisted cheerfully. Your poor mother was constantly apologizing for your unladylike interests. Your father, though he adored your curious mind, used to say you should have been born in the next century when women might have more opportunities. Levi reached for Clara's hand under the table. She makes her own opportunities now. Emily's approving nod meant more to him than he'd expected. Yes, I can see that. You've built something remarkable here, both of you. The night before Emily's departure, she and Clara sat up late, talking by the fire while Levi gave them privacy. Later, Clara came to bed with tear tracks on her cheeks but a peaceful smile. She's given us her blessing, she told Levi as she nestled against him. Not that we needed it, but it means everything to have it. She's a remarkable woman, Levi observed, much like her niece. She said something that touched me deeply, Clara continued. She said my parents would be proud of the life I've chosen, that my father especially would approve of my courage in forging my own path. Levi held her close, understanding how much those words meant. She's right, and I'm the fortunate beneficiary of that courage. Summer brought intense heat and the final months of Clara's pregnancy. She moved more slowly now, her belly prominent, but insisted on maintaining as many of her regular activities as possible. Levi found himself constantly amazed by her resilience and determination. In late August, as Clara entered her 9th month, they received an unexpected visitor. Sheriff Donovan rode up one afternoon, his expression grave. "Mr. Irwin, Mrs. Irwin," he greeted them on the porch. "I'm afraid I have some potentially troubling news." Clara's hand found Levi's, gripping it tightly. "A man's been asking questions in town about a young woman matching Mrs. Irwin's description. Says he's representing a concerned family member from back east." Donovan's eyes narrowed. "Goes by the name of James Harper, but something about him doesn't sit right with me." "Blackburn," Clara whispered, her face paling. "He must have sent someone to find me." Levi's arm went protectively around her shoulders. "What did you tell him, Sheriff?" "Nothing of use," Donovan assured them. "Said I didn't recall any such woman passing through. But he's persistent, been showing her picture around town for 2 days now. Someone's bound to remember something eventually." "Thank you for the warning," Levi said. "We appreciate it." After the sheriff left, promising to keep them informed, Clara paced the main room despite her unwieldy condition. "He won't give up," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. "Blackburn is a man accustomed to getting what he wants." "If his agent finds me, he has no claim on you," Levi reminded her firmly. "You're my wife now, carrying my child. No court in the land would force you to return with him." "You don't know Richard Blackburn," Clara said darkly. "He doesn't always work through courts and legal means." Levi's expression hardened. "Then he'll find I don't always work through those means either, if it comes to protecting you and our child." The following day, Levi rode into town, leaving Clara in Mrs. Abernathy's capable care despite her protests. He found Harper easily enough, a thin, sharp-faced man asking questions at the general store. Levi followed him to the hotel and waited until he emerged before approaching him directly. "Mr. Harper," he called, causing the man to turn sharply. "I understand you're looking for someone." Harper's eyes narrowed. "Who's asking?" "Levi Irwin. I own the Triple L ranch north of town." Levi stepped closer, his voice dropping. "And I'm the husband of Clara Lowell, or Clara Irwin, as she's properly known now." Surprise flickered across Harper's face before he could mask it. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Let's not waste time," Levi said coldly. "You can tell your employer, Mr. Blackburn, that Clara is happily married and expecting our first child. She wants nothing to do with him or the life she left behind." Harper's expression shifted to calculation. "Mr. Blackburn is simply concerned for her welfare. There are significant financial matters that require her attention. Any legitimate business can be conducted through lawyers," Levi interrupted. "Though I suspect there's nothing legitimate about Blackburn's claims." "You're making a mistake," Harper warned. "Mr. Blackburn is a powerful man with connections throughout the country." "And I'm a man protecting his family," Levi replied evenly. "Tell Blackburn that if he persists in harassing my wife, I'll ensure the newspapers back east receive detailed accounts of how he tried to coerce a young woman into marriage through fraudulent claims on her inheritance. I imagine his business associates might find that information interesting." Harper's face flushed with anger. "You're bluffing. Try me." Levi stepped even closer. Clara kept records, documents, letters, enough to raise serious questions about Blackburn's business practices if they became public. This was a calculated risk. Clara had mentioned having some papers that supported her suspicions about Blackburn's manipulation of her father's business, but whether they were truly damaging enough to threaten him, Levi couldn't be certain. Harper studied him for a long moment, then nodded curtly. "I'll convey your message." "You do that," Levi said. "And then I suggest you take the next stage out of Montana territory. This isn't a healthy climate for men in your profession." When Levi returned home and recounted the confrontation to Clara, she alternated between relief and worry. "It was dangerous to confront him directly," she fretted. "Blackburn's men can be ruthless." "It was necessary," Levi countered. "Better to face this threat head-on than wait for it to find us unprepared." Clara sighed, resting her hands on her rounded belly. "I hope it's enough to make him give up his search. If not, we'll face whatever comes together," Levi promised, covering her hands with his own. 3 days later, Sheriff Donovan rode out to inform them that Harper had departed on the eastbound stage. Whether this meant Blackburn had abandoned his pursuit remained to be seen. But for now, at least, the immediate threat had passed. The reprieve came just in time. 2 weeks later, in the early hours of a clear September morning, Clara woke Levi with a hand gripping his arm. "The baby," she whispered, her face taut with pain. "It's time." Levi sprang into action, sending a ranch hand galloping for Dr. Simmons while Mrs. Abernathy prepared the bedroom and heated water. The labor progressed rapidly, too rapidly for the doctor to arrive in time. "The baby's coming now," Mrs. Abernathy announced after checking Clara's condition. No time to wait for the doctor. Levi stayed by Clara's side, holding her hand, wiping her brow, murmuring encouragement as she battled through each contraction. Her strength amazed him. Not once did she cry out, though the pain clearly tested the limits of her endurance. "You're the strongest person I've ever known," he told her between contractions. "You can do this, my love." Clara managed a strained smile. "Remember that next time you think I can't handle ranch work." Just after sunrise, with a final, tremendous effort, Clara brought their daughter into the world, a robust, wailing infant with a shock of dark hair and her mother's determined chin. "She's perfect, Mrs. Abernathy declared as she cleaned and swaddled the newborn. "Healthy as can be." When Levi held his daughter for the first time, looking down into her tiny, red face, a love unlike anything he'd ever experienced washed over him. He placed her gently in Clara's arms, watching as his exhausted wife's face transformed with wonder. "Hello, little one," Clara whispered. "We've been waiting for you." "What shall we name her?" Levi asked, his voice thick with emotion. Clara looked up at him, her eyes shining despite her fatigue. "I'd like to call her Emma, after my mother's middle name." "Emma Irwin." Levi tried the name, finding it fit perfectly. "Welcome to the world, Emma." Dr. Simmons arrived an hour later, pronounced both mother and child in excellent health, and congratulated Levi on handling the delivery so well. Mrs. Abernathy did most of the work, Levi admitted. "I just tried not to faint." The doctor chuckled. "More than many men manage. You've got a fine family here, Irwin." Family. The word resonated in Levi's heart as he watched Clara nursing their daughter later that day. From a solitary existence, he now had a wife he adored, a child to cherish, a home filled with love. In the weeks that followed, they adjusted to life with an infant. Emma proved to have her mother's strong will and her father's steady disposition, a combination that manifested in a baby who nursed vigorously, rarely cried without good reason, and watched the world with alert, curious eyes. Clara recovered quickly from the birth, soon resuming many of her usual tasks with Emma swaddled against her chest or sleeping nearby. The sight of them together, his two loves, never failed to stop Levi in his tracks, overwhelming him with gratitude. One evening in late autumn, as the first snow began to fall outside, Levi found Clara standing by the window in their bedroom, Emma sleeping peacefully in her cradle nearby. He slipped his arms around her waist from behind, breathing in the lavender scent of her hair. "Happy," he murmured against her ear. Clara leaned back against his chest with a contented sigh. "More than I ever imagined possible." Levi tightened his embrace slightly. "No regrets about the life you left behind?" She turned in his arms to face him, her expression serious. "The only regret I have is that I didn't find you sooner." "I would have waited," Levi said simply. "However long it took." Clara reached up to touch his face, her eyes soft with love. "Do you remember what you said to me that day by the road, when I was barely conscious?" Levi nodded. "You'll wake in a bed, not the dirt." Such a simple promise, Clara mused, but it was the beginning of everything for us. "The best beginning I could have asked for," Levi agreed, bending to kiss her with all the love that had grown between them since that fateful day. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the ranch in pristine white, a fresh page, like the one they'd turned together when a cowboy found a woman sleeping beside the road and changed both their lives forever.